Hey guys, it's Bill, also known as Pork Chop Messiah. I'm back here with another gun4ir build, and I've been getting a lot of cool feedback from a lot of my friends in the gaming world on some of the builds I've done. I think this is going to be the coolest build that I've done so far, and I just wanted to kind of run through some of the things I've done in the process in case anybody wants to build one. It's a lot of different things coming together, and they're not all downloadable in one place, so I figured I'd run through some of the parts and give you an idea of how they're coming together so far. And this is going to be a gradual process, so it's not one continuous video. It's going to be day by day, piece by piece, and I'll try and give you an idea. So the first thing you want to do is you go on Thingiverse and just do a search for carbine, and that's going to give you a nice print model. And these are the parts that come together. This can be printed in one section if you have a tall enough printer. It would print vertically like that. But these are the two biggest pieces. They take a while to print, especially if you want to use a fine resolution. Okay, so these two pieces here, and I'm going to clear as I go through them. I'm going to get them out of the way so I can show you some of the other stuff. So these two pieces connect. At the end of the build, for the aesthetics, these are Picatinny rails that you'll screw down. They will go up on top, and you can actually put a real legit sight on this if you wanted. I don't know why you would, but you could. And there's one for the bottom as well, be on the underside. So get rid of those. This grip will also be somewhere in this neighborhood here. Probably right about something like that. Okay, and it's going to print you out this and this. This comes together on the back side of the model here. Let me get that right. Okay, this goes in there. This goes on the back there. Okay, that's at the rear. And then this part here will fit into any stock that you want to use. This, I just picked this out. These are available all over. Just put in gun stock on Thingiverse and you can get a bunch of different models. Whatever floats your boat on that. And then there's like a little indexed screw hole in the bottom so you can make this adjustable. And that's the bulk of the parts right there. So let me get these out of the way and I'll show you some of the other stuff. You want to print yourself out a Glock frame. This is a Glock 17, I think. But I printed a couple. They are somewhat universal, and the part that's important is the front here. That's got to slide into your housing, and I'll show you that in a second. The second important part is we will be using a slide, and also in the printout of the carbine you're going to get this little piece here, which you will then be able to screw this handle in, and when you have your model you'll be able to actuate that here. I think it's going to work out cool. I'm going to put a button somewhere on the rear side where you can either get a game start by sliding backwards or maybe even reload. Depends how smooth this is. It may not be the best idea, but we're going to definitely put a button on there that does something. The slide itself, the better one to use, in my opinion, is an airsoft. Most of the stuff here is airsoft to one degree or another, but the difference between airsoft and non-airsoft is this is a non-airsoft, and this has all this material in the back, which is just going to take up room, and you're going to need that. So this is not what you want. You want one that's mostly hollow. This is a Glock 17 airsoft slide. I'm assuming that the other one that I found is a real one, but we're not interested in that stuff. We're just making stuff for video games. So the slide goes on here like this, and this one will work on this frame. It goes back and forth, but what you want to do is find a frame where these little posts have the feet to grab the groove in here, and that will really make it really work well. But you know, when it's all said and done, the pistol portion is going to slide in like that, okay? And then, like I said before, the rear end of it, without the stock, kind of this part here, like that from the back. And they give you all the hardware that you need. They'll give you a list of the shopping list for Home Depot or wherever you go to hold all this stuff together. There's a couple screws that go in here to hold this together. But that's basically how it's going to look. So the next part is something I actually had to design. It didn't take long. It's not hard by any stretch. Is this slide here. And this is going to house the camera. And you have your little adapter there to get your fisheye lens on it. The reason I did this is because this is going to slide into the main body here like that. It's going to go in right up to the edge here, and then you're going to, use either some acetone or a slurry of acetone and ABS or ASA. It blocks you from seeing all the wires and things like that, and it still gives you that appearance of some multiple depth through the side here, and that's really what I was going for. Leave the camera loose so you can adjust when you go into the GUI for gun4ir, so you don't have to wind up turning this thing. But that's my idea. All the electronics are going to be in this thing. The buttons, I'm going to wind up after I have all the rails on and everything. Like the rails will be at the bottom here. So we're going to kind of wear that down a little bit, Dremel that, and then I'm hoping to get at least 3 buttons in here. Might be a little tight, but that's my goal. I need to have like probably 3 buttons. I'd like to have a start, a select, A and B. One of them will be on the slide, but that's my goal. So the next part of the project that I'm going to do is I'm going to start working on the actual gun frame with a trigger system, and we're going to see how that works. So let me kind of get my stuff together here and we'll start working on that. Alright, so here we are trying to work on a triggering system. I have myself a normal micro switch here. Probably going to be removing the metal. I cut some of it off already, but what we're going to want to do is, this fits really nicely in here, so depending on the angle I can get this at, we're going to somehow get this thing to stay down, and when we get our trigger installed, part of your gun prints you should be looking for is a trigger pin, which I found, oddly enough, I had a nail laying around and that actually fit really nicely. So you could find other things. I wanted to print the pin, so that one fits right in there. You just have to tap it in very gently. These are 4mm, if that means anything, which I believe is a 5/32 drill bit. You can hollow that hole out a little bit more than 4mm and it'll still fit. But once we get the trigger in there, we are going to try to get this switch here on this sort of an angle so that the trigger comes in this area here. So that's going to be the project. I've mentioned to a couple people before, this comes in really handy. It's a 3D print pen, and what I'm going to want to do after I have it in the position I want and I see that it works to my satisfaction. In fact, I'm not even going to probably use that button. I'm going to use the one that doesn't have the arm on it to begin with. So when it fits in there, we get the angle just right. What I'm going to want to do, in fact, that almost, you can hear it, it works really well. So we're going to build up material. This is useful because when you get to the end of your 3D printing and you have, feet or more of material, what I do is I save all these pieces, and when I'm doing a build of something, I can add material in and it'll fuse with the existing print. Sometimes I even dab just a bit of acetone where I want to start, and it helps it adhere a little bit better. I've tested this on a bunch of my builds. I've done buttons, drilled it, tapped it, screwed into lumps that I've made with a 3D print pen on an existing frame, and it works fantastic. So this is, if you're doing a bunch of work like this with ABS, use your excess from the end of your spools, and you can just add material wherever you want. It might work with PLA as well. It's definitely hot enough. I just don't know how PLA bonds to itself. Like I said, I use a little bit of acetone sometimes to help it dissolve and break it up and make it a little bit more receptive to the this material. I use ASA now. I used to use ABS, but I think the ASA is much easier to work with. So like I said, this comes in handy. I honestly don't know how I would have done this. Maybe a hot melt glue gun could accomplish the same thing. But this is the way I decided to go. It works for me, what can I tell you? So we're going to get to work on installing the trigger, and then we're going to use that 3D print pen and layer over. Alright, so I'm back. I got my trigger switch installed and the trigger itself. I don't know if you can see it real well, but what I did was I took that 3D print pen and I put a nice ribbon of material up and around and infused it to the frame. The trigger is in there, and you know, we got a nice snappy clicky trigger, and that trigger is not going anywhere. That's in there good. For realism, a couple of the other doodads I printed out was I didn't want this hole on the side, so I actually printed out a nice magazine release clip, or I don't even know what you call it. I'm not a gun guy, in case you couldn't tell. So if I butcher the names on these things, I don't want a bunch of people coming after me like, you don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, I don't. Okay, I'm not a gun guy. I like video games. So anyway, this is the thing that's going to release that. I'll probably just glue that down, but I wanted to fill that, and I also put the slide release. The switch is there. It's the lever for it, but the spring and stuff is not. I will probably just hot melt glue in the top there where that is, just so it doesn't move after it's assembled. I just thought it would add extra character to the build with the way it looks. So this was actually part that I was kind of concerned was going to be difficult, but it seems to have worked out well. It's in there nice and solid. And the next step for me now is going to probably be starting to solder the Arduino components together, getting the wiring on there. Probably do the camera first, so that'll be my next step. Hey guys, back on the gun build. I had my first redesign necessity. I was laying things out last night and seeing how everything fit together, and I had to modify and change some things. The first problem that I had was the tube here. Originally I had drilled a couple of holes through here, and what I found is that it was never going to let me slide the tube into here because the wires would catch on the edges. So what I did was I went back up and redesigned the tube, so now I have a nice groove in there. The fit of the components was a lot tighter than I thought, but what I'm doing is I'm putting the recoil in right about here, and the wire from the camera will be able to kind of go under it and then back up, and it's going to sit right in that groove. The other part of that equation is I've begun to solder the wires on the buttons. I got my grounds on already. I'm going to put some colored wires on there, and what is going to happen is, as these are already going to be mounted in here, the wires I'll have to fish out of here after this is installed, and then when I slide that in, that's going to allow the wires to kind of move through that without getting pinched. So that's my first redesign problem. The second one was just more of a where things fit type thing, and I've kind of decided that in the slide I'm going to mount the Arduino right up in there like that and glue it down. The USB cable will come from this direction. It'll probably be riding right over the top of the micro switch for the trigger, and then all of the wires for the buttons and the MOSFET will run through the front of where the barrel would be, and then in towards that tube. It'll probably lay out something kind of like that. They're not going to be that far apart, so I can keep my wires kind of short. But it's the movement of having to put it together that it's going to get a little tricky, and it's going to be probably a little annoying to get all those wires to fit in there. But those are my two redesigns at the moment. Another tip is, if you are going to do this project, whenever you have to drill through something like this piece here, make your prints very high on infill. I did this one like at 80%. It's really heavy, but it's very dense, and you're not going to get splintering and cracking. But that's where I'm at right now. I'm going to start putting some colored wires on here, and then try and mount this to here, and then pull the wires out this way, and that should be good. And that's where we're at, and I will pick up in a little bit once I've got some more accomplished. Hey guys, back again. I finished soldering the wires onto the bottom of the switches. They are loosely pressed in there. What I did was I snaked the wires for the buttons first, because I figured that was going to be the hardest, which it was. The second step was I laid the camera wire into the channel, and I have slid that in there. That will go in nicely. You'll see I have a little bit of length here. This should reach the Arduino easily enough. The next step I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this just out enough, and we're going to push that wire down into the channel there. And the next step for me is going to be gluing the recoil down over it. It's going to go in just like that, and then I'm going to push those wires in and grab them with pliers from the opposite end, and then that way I can push this all the way through, and that end of the build is going to be done. I don't really want to go messing around in this tube too much, just because it is not the easiest thing. It doesn't take that long, but it's just, you know, when you're trying to get something done, it's sort of a pain in the neck. So the next step for me is we're going to plug in the hot glue gun, and we're going to glue this guy down in there, and then everything should slide in nicely, and then I should be able to then screw down the Picatinny rail with the buttons on it. And then the next step is going to be starting to wire up the Arduino. Be back in a few. Alright, so I'm just about to put in my recoil solenoid into the barrel adapter that I made. One thing that I did want to show you, I cut a couple of pieces of thin white paper, and I wrapped it over and around the wire for the camera, basically right in the spot that it's going to be glued. And that had occurred to me because I want to leave the camera just a little bit loose here, because when I start setting this thing up with the gun4ir software, I may need to rotate the camera just a little bit. So I don't want this thing getting glued down to the bottom of the solenoid and completely inflexible. I also need to be able to push it back and seat it. So that's where we're going to lay it. Just waiting for my glue gun to heat up, and it looks like we got good flow here. So I'm just really going to glob this in here, try and press that down just a little bit. Maybe a little bit there as well. And we're going to just lay this stuff in there real heavy. Alright, and we're just going to drop this guy right in there. And I'll press it down, not too hard, but firmly enough that it seats nicely. Because like I said, I did have a really tight tolerance of sliding this thing inside. So this should just take a couple seconds, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tear these pieces off, or just cut it with an X-Acto knife, and then that should slide right in there beautifully. It shouldn't hit the wire at all, which is what I was aiming for, and I can just kind of push that back in after I've adjusted, and that should be the end of it. And then I'll move on to bigger and better things, starting to wire the Arduino. Okay, so I'm going to let this dry a little bit and pick up again later. Alright, the Arduino is glued down and in place. I still have enough wiggle here, and then I can push that back in and seat it. My button rail is in. I just have to screw it down, and the reason I haven't yet is because there was some funkiness with the way this attaches, and it's not that it doesn't, it's just that when you're putting this together, the order in which you put it together impacts where this last screw right here can get attached. So I remember when I put it together the first time, I said, oh wow, I can't screw that down, but I had to remove, I think, the frame of the gun before I put that in. But I just wanted to show the finished assembly. It's together. I haven't screwed it down. We got 3 buttons here. We're still hoping to get maybe 1 or 2 more on the back end, but I just wanted to show the finished barrel assembly. Camera, wires, everything's identifiable. I didn't cut any of the ends off of the camera yet, so those are easily recognized by color. I didn't duplicate anything except for the, actually I didn't duplicate, that's actually kind of, I guess that is orange. So I do have 1 orange wire for one of the buttons, but the recoil solenoid is the red. The blacks are all grounds. The purple, orange, and brown are the signals for the buttons going back to the Arduino. And I'm just about ready to start soldering some more. So next step, we're going to start getting the rear attachment on the gun put on, and get a little bit more done on that. Hey guys, last I left you off, I had glued down the recoil and kind of strung some wires through here, and I was going to start assembling, but what I completely forgot was the MOSFET for the recoil. So I had to go ahead and make one of these. If you're interested, I will post the links on how to make one of these. If you want to just go right to the YouTube channel, go to the Arcade Pirate on YouTube. He has some really awesome videos on assembling some gun4ir. That's where I've learned most of my skills. So what I need to do here is I need to thread this through the barrel up to here, and the game plan is we're going to glue it on the one of the 2 walls here. That's what I want to do. So what I'm planning on is using the camera leads to pull this through the tube. So I'm going to just tape this together. Wrap that around there like so. It shouldn't be too hard because there's a lot of room in there. So we're just gonna get that guy through, pull him all the way through like that. And hopefully all the wires I need are still long enough. Yeah, it looks halfway decent. Now that being said, I am rapidly running out of room inside here. There is a lot of stuff going on here, but what I've tried to do is keep most of the wiring hidden in here and a bare minimum going through the barrel of the gun on that side. Hopefully it's just going to be some signal wires. I thought about shrink tubing the whole loom coming through the nose of the gun. I still am on the fence about that. I don't know. We got to see how that works out. But I've also decided I'm probably going to attempt to add a button on the top rail as well. I do have one more on-off button, and I'm probably going to use that for my recoil kill. As it stands right now, I have the 3 on the bottom, and everything seems to be good with that. Like I said, the only thing right now I got to worry about is gluing this down, and maybe I will attach the rail up here and drill through and see where I'm at with that as well. So next thing I'm going to do is just glue this down here, and then I'll proceed from there. Hey, when I last left off, I was going to drill some holes, and we were going to get a recoil kill switch in here, and in a moment of human weakness, I never bothered to check what drill bit I had, and I made the hole way too big. However, I did get lucky that I can just reprint this rather than reprint the entire assembly. So that's going on behind me right over there, and in about another hour and a half I'll be back ready to do some more work. So it's been a little bit slow going of late. I haven't done too much, but I kind of jumped around a little bit. I'm a little scatterbrained, but I did start doing some of the actual gun body stuff. So you can see here, I have mounted a switch with a spring on it. Let me get that wire out of the way so you can see. So there's a little spring on there to give it a little bit of pushback, and it's just your average button. You can buy them on Amazon. So the idea is that when this is mounted into the larger body, there's a arm that's going to come out of here that should allow you to cock the slide back on here, and that ought to look something like this. So when the slide is on, there should be just enough tension on that spring where this should be just about flush, and then I've been checking it with my ohm meter that if you just give it a little bit tug further back, you press that spring in and you get continuity. So that'll allow me to cock the gun a little bit on the slide. It's not going to have full motion, but you're not going to see it anyway because it's inside of the larger housing. So that's done, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to solder some wires onto the trigger micro switch, and they will all four of them come out of the barrel along with the cable for the USB, and also the red and the black wires for the solenoid will also be going back through the barrel of the gun. They should fit easily, but I've been thinking about maybe shrink wrapping the whole bunch of them together so that the barrel, the slide kind of slides over them nice and easy. But I haven't come to a decision on that yet. But that's where I'm at, and we're going to do a little bit of soldering, and I will check back in a little bit. Today I made some good progress. I've got my cabling done. What I wanted to show you was I actually got a good magazine file and the base, and we're just going to glue that together. That fits really good. It fits in the gun. It's actually going to lock in with the normal clip release button. Not that you'll ever take that out, but it's pretty cool. I kind of like the way that works. It actually also opens up the possibility somewhere down the road I may be able to make some sort of a button into the clip or into the button for the quick release. But next thing I'm going to do now is I am going to hot melt the base onto the clip. We're going to run the wires up into the butt of the pistol. I do have to run the ground wires up through the barrel. I kind of screwed up. I soldered all my grounds without connecting them, so I got to cut one of them and splice them all in. But that's not too big of a deal. And then we're getting pretty close to final assembly. I got the top rail screwed down with the recoil kill. The buttons are all wired and soldered at the bottom, and we're getting towards the home stretch. This is pretty cool. I'm almost at the end here. So we're going to screw around a little bit more with the base of this and glue it together, and we will be nearing the finish line pretty soon. So the last time I worked on the gun was a couple of days ago, and I was really getting excited because I was just down to some nitty-gritty on soldering, and I was getting close to the finish line. So Thanksgiving Eve, I had a few cocktails, came down, and I actually was able to really wrap this project up. I'm pretty proud of it. It came out really nice. So I'll go through the components. Right here is a AR-15 stock. Downloaded this off Thingiverse. There's a lot of other ones. I just kind of liked the way that looked with the sweeping lines on it. The part here, the tube, this assembly, the Picatinny rails, and this forward grip, that is a carbine airsoft, which fits a Glock frame. The Glock frame is something you might have to go diving down rabbit holes to find, but they're out there. I was able to get the magazine release to work, even though you don't want to do that because that's where all the wiring is, but it does pop loose and it does lock in. The trigger is also a legit one. The base plate for the magazine is also good. For aesthetics, I printed out a actual magazine, and that is held in here. The forward grip here is also part of the carbine file for the airsoft. The cabling, little flexible loom. I did 2 leads. I went with extra long USB. This is 15 feet. This is, I think, 12 feet. I like to stand a little further back, especially when playing like a rifle game. I just like standing further away from the machine. I don't like to have tight cables. I usually have this one looped with a hold down on the machine so it doesn't yank out when you're moving around and stuff. The only part I really designed myself was the nose piece here. That slides back into the housing about this far. This holds all of the electronics. The recoil, the MOSFET, and the Arduino are all up in here. I actually had to redesign it once because the wiring, it just got really tight when I was assembling. It is not hard to do. I'll make that available on Thingiverse if anybody really wants to make this this project. The buttons, the only one I didn't get to work was the slide here. I didn't get that to work. Like I said, the wiring was really tight, so this does not slide. It's just there for looks. But up on top here, we have a recoil kill. You can turn your recoil on and off with that button. And then I was able to get 3 buttons here for A, B, and select. So you do have a little bit of options. In the future, if I ever make another one of these, I could probably find a way to put a button, another one up here, or maybe 2 on the top. So there's possibilities. I don't know if I could put a joypad on, but you know, it's one of those things. I was kind of figuring this out as I went, but I am really happy with the results. The camera's up front there, but overall, I think the gun looks really good. So the next thing for us is we're going to put it onto the machine and see how it plays.
Stay frosty. Open the door. Come on, people. Let's go. Get that door open. We're on. Keep it moving. We're detecting movement.
Works pretty good, I think.